Hey, I'm Maeve McAuliffe. I am reading from a book called Hairstyles of the Damned by Meno. I'm going to read one chapter out of it. It's the mole people and other monster movies were what my dad and I would sometimes watch together without having to say anything. Like one night I came home late and my father was asleep on the couch and his face was all blue and white because it was dark downstairs and the TV was still on. And I could hear sirens and shooting from whatever he'd been watching. Hunter, probably. That was his show. The one with that dude, Fred Dryer. Because he liked that Fred Dryer had been a linebacker on the Pittsburgh Steelers and now was on TV. I can remember falling asleep and my parents having to come in and turn off the television. So that reminds me of that sort of thing when I would kind of open my eyes a little bit and they'd be in there taking care of me and turning the TV off and making sure I was in bed. It's kind of sad thinking about somebody's dad sleeping on the couch like that. And I was sneaking into my room and my dad was snoring, and then suddenly he sat up and said, "Hey, Brian. Brian, is that you?" And he shoved his glasses back on quickly, pretending he'd been up waiting and not totally asleep. "Yeah, Dad, it's me." "Where have you been all night, kid?" he said, smiling. And I said, "Gretchen's. I was out with Gretchen." "Out with Gretchen, huh?" And he sat up, took his glasses off, rubbed his face, and then put them back on, smiling again. "Guess what's on tonight on cable?" he asked, "at midnight." "I don't know," I said. "The Mole People." "The Mole People?" I love that movie. And The Mole People was this weird science fiction movie back from the 50s, probably one of my favorite movies of all time. It was about these scientists who climbed the Himalayas or some mountain range in Asia or whatever, and they discovered the secret passageway in this underground civilization that was hundreds of miles down and like 1,000 years old. It's funny how specific he remembers this movie from when he was a kid. I just think that's interesting. It gets really specific, whereas up before he wasn't quite so tuned into what he was thinking. It was like this kind of world of these beautiful, secret, super pale Egyptians. They all dressed like that, with the pharaoh kind of helmets and belts and buckles and whips and man dresses or whatever you call them. And they were all albinos because they hadn't seen the sun, like, ever. And they were the rulers of the civilization. But there were these other people, the monsters, the mole people, who didn't look like moles at all, but were kind of lizards, but not lizards. They were blackish with scales. And they had these big white eyes and narrow, small mouths and huge, huge four-fingered claws. And they are forced to work in these mines or caves and to serve the albino people. So the monsters are actually the good people, and the good looking people are actually bad. And that's kind of interesting because in this book is set, the narrator's in high school, and it's very emotionally driven, so it kind of feels like this kind of movie would very much be attuned to him because he feels very much an outsider in high school, and a lot of times that's how kids feel, where the good looking people are all popular and kind of make life difficult for them, and then people who think they're monsters, or Brian here, would feel like he was the underdog. So it makes sense that this movie would like really make sense to him. Also, one young stud scientist discovered this hot, normal looking girl with dark hair and a regular complexion who's considered a freak because she isn't an albino. And the scientist and the normal girl fall in love. And the scientists help the mole people revolt. And there's some kind of fight of some kind and an earthquake. And somehow sunlight makes its way down there. And it generally freaks out all the albinos. And that's all I could basically remember. I'd watched it a few times when I was really young with my dad when it played on late night Saturday horror show Son of Svengali. It was this local program that ran old black and white monster movies every Saturday night. That was our thing, my dad and me. We would watch these monster movies every Saturday night. And how long had that been? So it's interesting, like, his dad's trying to reconnect with him, and he's realizing that he's kind of moving away from his dad. He's not doing the things they've always been. It's kind of an interesting, like, epiphany that he's having right there. I looked over at my dad and smiled. Yeah, that one part where the monsters help the scientist out. I love that. I know it. So can you watch it? He asked, smiling big and nodding. Or do you have some homework or something to do like that? No, I can watch it, I said, and I threw my coat in my room and sat down on the soft green chair beside the couch and watched as Hunter tackled a suspect flying over the hood of a car and landing in a pile of cardboard boxes. So, Dad, how long do you plan on sleeping down here? I asked. I don't know, he said, staring straight ahead. Am I cramping your style? No, I guess I was just worried about Mom and everything. And this is this moment that they're having this kind of adult conversation, but it doesn't go quite so well because the dad says, "You let me worry about that," he said. "We're having problems, we'll work it out, I promise." And it's that realization as a parent where your kid sees something that you don't always want them to see, that they worry about you because they know that unfortunately parents are vulnerable and they have lives just like everyone else. It's kind of an interesting moment for this character to kind of realize. I turned and looked at him. He didn't look too hopeful. He had a long red pillow mark on the side of his cheek, and he was still wearing his work clothes because Mom had stopped doing his laundry, apparently. He switched the channel and stretched out his feet, and I noticed his socks were gray and dirty. I was going to say something, but decided not to. I just sat there and watched as titles began to appear over a cavernous, murky cave, the foreboding music rising. Well, here we go with the mole people, my dad said. You can always count on them. You sure can, I said back. And I just think that's a really good capture of like an interesting point of a son-father relationship where there's all this stuff going on and the character wants to help his father or just be there for his dad, but, you know, as a parent, he doesn't want his son to worry about him. And it's just interesting how the character really sees these small things like the red line on his face because he's obviously been sleeping on the couch, not upstairs, and his socks, and his dad's just having a hard time, and Brian sees that and really wants to help, but he's only 17. He doesn't know exactly what to do, and even if he was an adult, sometimes there's just these things that kids can't do for their parents, and it's an interesting look at that relationship. Thanks.